Hey, welcome back to my Europa build. So today we're going to be putting in an access panel that allows access to the back side of the fuel selector. So if you ever need to do maintenance in the future, it makes it a lot easier to get to those fittings, to remove them and put some new ones in, or just some general inspection and whatnot. As you can see here, the hole's already been cut. That's been cut for a while now. I just haven't got around to placing the access panel. So it's a several step process. The idea is to put what was cut out back in place, do some layups behind it, pop out the access panel, prep it for some nut plates, put the access panel back in, cut the hole so you can get back there through what you've already put in. It sounds confusing. Again, there's a lot of steps, but hopefully this video, as you watch it, it'll make sense. This will probably be a couple days worth of video to put it all together because I gotta let it cure and what have you. Here's the access panel cover that's already been cut out. This is the front side, this is the inside. So I'm going to come in with some release tape, cover this area because I don't want what I'm going to bond to the aircraft to stick to this surface, because I'm going to pop this out later, cut a relief so this has something to sit against. There are more efficient ways of doing this. This was already cut out, like I said, so I'm having to come back and kind of do it a little bit differently. So again, this is just for release of the fiberglass epoxy. Apologize for any kind of sound that may or may not be picked up, maybe too loud or what have you. I'm actually trying to get a new camera here. This is an old GoPro that I'm filming this with, so I get something maybe a little bit better quality, better mic. That's probably really loud. But not too concerned with some of the way this is laying up here, because again, it's the only thing that matters is this side to be nice and flat and even with that, it's not that big of a deal. You just don't want whatever you're gluing it to actually stick to this piece. So I'm gonna come in and tape up a couple more areas. Looks pretty good. Doesn't have to be perfect. So now I'm going to come in with some popsicle sticks or tongue depressors or whatever. Tape that down so I have something to tape against the existing surface of the airplane so it sits somewhat flush. Again, just have to make sure that the orientation for what you got is correct. Again, it's not imperative that everything sit nice and cozy here. I'll come back and cut some of that off. Alright, here we are back in the plane. We're looking in from the co-pilot side down to kind of the center area. And so what I need to do here is, thankfully there's these lines already in kind of the mold, so kind of match up how they run so you get the best kind of orientation for what was cut out. It's not hugely imperative, but it just makes life a lot easier if you can get those right. And again, these popsicle sticks are mainly there to keep it from going too deep and also to keep it exactly in place. And I'm going to tape these up so when I put 4 layers of fiberglass on the other side, I'm not pushing it back out. And I've sanded the back side of what I'm going to apply. to the outside flange with 60 grit sandpaper, and then I came back with about 120, just whatever, to knock down the real sharp edges after that aggressive sandpaper. And then clean it up with a little bit of acetone. I'm going to come back again and suck up some of the dust that you see here, and then prep it again for the layup. Alright, so I took it back out because I didn't like the way the tape was laying. It was actually protruding a little proud on the inside. So all I did was cut the tape back a bit, reapply them. But I wanted to say a trick is you take a piece of tape and you fold it in half, but leave enough to tape down on your piece. That way you can hold it from one side. That way it makes it a little easier to line it up with the lines. Try to get it as centered as possible. And once that looks about right, just a little overhang tape that you had, just press it down, and then I'm going to secure it with a little more tape and then get started with the layups. Coming back up under the airplane, we're going to look at where I did the layups on the access panel. I haven't touched it since I did the initial layup. This is post-cure, a couple days later. So the peel ply is still on there. I'm going to remove that and probably have to do a little cleanup from maybe any kind of strands of fiberglass that are protruding a bit around that radius in the front and back. As you can see, the access panel is still in place. There's a hole there in the center that I'm going to reference by drilling out the layups that I just put in, and that's going to help me come back later with a smaller diameter hole saw to cut out the access so you can get in there. And that's important. That hole is important to drill out before you move the access panel, just so you have a center point of reference, so everything's kind of symmetrical looking.
have penetrated.
Just about.
Dammer that thing.
Alright. Very cool.
Mission accomplished.
Alright, so I've cut out the access hole, post-cure on the flanges, as you see there. I've located and drilled out the holes for the nut plates to go on the back. The next step is, if you see the little foam in there, the sandwiched foam between the layers of fiberglass, I've got to sand that out or grind that out behind or past these holes where the screws will go through, and that'll give it, I'll replace what I remove with some flocks, and that'll basically give it a little bit more strength. So over time, as you're removing or whatnot and screwing this down, over torque may deform that without the proper kind of backing. Same thing goes for this edge here. So I'm going to grind out this area here all the way around, and then come back with flocks and fill it in. So after that, it's nut plate time. So got to drill out the holes for the pop rivets to hold the nut plate in place, and then final fitment. And then from there, there's on these holes that are in here, I'll countersink them for the screws to be flush on the surface, and then in that countersink will be a seat of flocks for that screw to sit in. And of course you'll do some release wax on the screw so you can take it back out and all around the existing area. Once that's all done, then we'll come back and add some electrical tape around this perimeter here, and we'll secure it in place. And then we're going to pack in some micro filler around the edge to basically make it not such a big gap. And so when the plate is removed, and that the tape around the edge basically gives it that relief that we're looking for. Alright, getting ready to finish the closeout for the access panel. I've taped it up just so any kind of excess doesn't get all over the place for easy cleanup, no other reason. As far as the panel is concerned, I've taped up both sides with clear tape, and I've wrapped it around with a few layers of electrical tape just to give it a relief, if you will, once that's all removed. I also sprayed the access panel, especially the perimeter where we're going to be applying the micro, with hairspray, and I'm waiting for that to dry as a release agent. So once I get that in there, I'm going to screw these down, mix up some micro, and apply it around the perimeter. Try to make it as even as possible. I'm okay if it's a little proud now, because we can always come back and sand it. I just don't want it to be any valleys, because then I'd have to come back and add more micro. If you can see, there's already some white residue in there. This is my second attempt. The first one, the micro was too wet when I applied it, and I didn't wait long enough to start applying it to the plane, so it kind of just drooped everywhere and caused valleys in what I was trying to fill. And so also when I pulled the access panel off, I didn't have hairspray on there. I thought the electrical tape would be enough, but it chipped out on me, so I had to grind it back out. No big deal, real easy to grind out, and sanded it down kind of smooth, acetoned it to clean it up, and on to my second attempt. So hopefully this one goes a little bit easier and better. I haven't decided yet. I might come back with superfill instead of micro. I have some superfill left over that I need to order more anyway for the plane to finish it out, so I'll probably use some of that. just to use what I have because it's kind of old. Alright, so post care, I've already taken the panel out. It was a little bit of a trick. Nothing really to show there other than just patience with trying to get it out and getting the bond, I guess you could say, between this whatever you put in there and the electrical tape to release. I did run a knife in there when it was nice and firm to try and give it a little bit of relief. As you can see, there's a little bit of a gap still here and here. I think it's a little unavoidable with the way that I just drug on the knife to get around, but it's better than chip out from the first one. So I removed the panel, took the tape off, the electrical tape that is around the side, and then I put it back in. And now I'm just doing a kind of a first round of finish sanding to get it final fitment. So when I come in to finish the interior, it'll have a nice contoured or flush look to it. Just sanding, sanding, sanding. That's all composites really boil down to, is just a ton of sanding. And but I'll give you a view of what it looks like when I'm done. No sense in watching me sand this for how long ever it takes. There are some other updates on the plane. I have, let's see if I can get the camera over to that side, but over here where the brakes are fitted, I don't have the top plate fully home yet. You can see the clecos are still in place, but in there's a phenolic board, and what that does is it's an anti-wear board, so when the brakes levers come back on it, they have something to ride against that isn't going to mar the aluminum arms and whatnot, or the top plate. It just kind of gives them a little guide. There's a little bit of play in the arms, but they do kind of spring towards each other a bit, so I went ahead and put that in there to just give it something to go on. The other thing that I have been working on and finished was I laid up 3 layers of bidirectional cloth, and I used a vacuum form on it and whatnot. It was my first time doing a vacuum bagging on epoxy layups, and as you can see the imperfection here where the mistakenly had the suction port from here sitting on top, with the batting and all that, and just suck it right down on top of it. Next time I'll put it off to the side. So we'll see how far I can get with this. But the main reason for this material is to go up under here as a cover plate. And so you wanted a little bit of flexibility in it because you're going to match the contour of the bottom, and then I'll trace that out. Sorry, pay attention to the camera, Kyle. So I'll trace that out and try to minimize the amount of that imperfection that's in there. I need to cut an access cover in this as well so I can get up from the bottom to do maintenance in this tunnel area. And what I'll do is trace it out, make it flush with the bottom of the plane, and then glass it from the inside, and probably like one layer from the outside, and then kind of finish it with super fill to make it flush with the rest of the fuselage. And when you paint it, hopefully you'll never notice it. It'll be blended in. These are other examples of the phenolic board here I was talking about where the brakes are. The rudder cables rub against that, so gives it something to ride against without doing damage. And you can see it here in the plates from the underneath side. That's what I've been working on. Trying to think of any other projects I've been doing. And one was I have Whalen Nav Lights, and it was a concern of mine brought up by a couple people that due to the age they may have bad capacitors in them. So this was in the wing, and so I took it out of the wing and took it apart. It was pretty dusty, but just doing a quick inspection of it, there's the capacitors there, and so they don't look popped. Top one looks flush too. So whether it works, I don't know. If it does work, I'll probably end up selling it. I'd like to get something a little more efficient than these older style, because you can see it pulls 3 amps and I would rather use something a little more efficient like LEDs, because I don't plan on running the secondary alternator on the Rotax. I'd like to try and minimize the amount of amp draw as much as possible. But that's it for now.